Hello and welcome back to the HIV RNA Test Guide podcast. You're here because, well, you're committed to understanding HIV, right? Staying informed about the latest in testing and treatment options. And that's what we're all about here.
Definitely.
Today we're doing a deep dive. Might surprise you a little bit. We're going to explore some unexpected connections between HIV and Ebola.
Okay.
You wouldn't think those two viruses have a lot in common.
Not really, no.
But researchers have discovered a really fascinating link between the two.
They have, and what's really intriguing is that both HIV and Ebola use the same receptor. It's called Siglec-1 to enter immune cells.
Wow.
This was a big breakthrough. It really was showing us that even though these viruses cause very different diseases, they share a common vulnerability.
It's like finding a secret passageway, right?
Yes.
That connects two totally separate worlds.
Exactly.
And this discovery could lead to some major implications for new treatments. I mean, imagine a drug that could block this receptor and prevent both HIV and Ebola from infecting cells.
Yeah.
That would be incredible.
It'd be a game changer, for sure. It highlights the potential for these scientific breakthroughs to have ripple effects across different diseases.
For sure.
And that's just one of the fascinating connections we'll uncover today. But before we get too deep into that, it's important to understand how these viruses are different too.
Okay, so let's back up for a second and talk about those differences. Because on the surface, HIV and Ebola seem pretty distinct.
They do, right? HIV is what we call a lentivirus.
Okay.
Which means it has a long latency period. You can be infected with HIV for years, even decades, without showing any symptoms. And while there's no cure for HIV, currently, people can live long and healthy lives with effective treatment. HIV specifically targets CD4 plus T cells, which are white blood cells,
Right.
that play a crucial role in the immune system. Over time, the virus weakens the immune system, making the body more susceptible to other infections, which can lead to AIDS.
And that's one of the big reasons HIV testing is so important.
Absolutely.
The sooner you know your status, the sooner you can start treatment and protect your health.
Couldn't agree more. Now, Ebola, on the other hand, that's a filovirus.
Okay.
Causes a much more rapid and severe illness, often with a high mortality rate. The symptoms of Ebola, like fever, muscle pain, hemorrhaging, are much more immediate and intense.
Yeah.
And unlike HIV, Ebola spreads through direct contact with bodily fluids from a person who is actively sick with the virus.
So even though they share that cellular entry pathway,
Right.
the way these viruses behave in the body and the way they spread are very different.
Yeah, very different.
It makes you wonder how researchers even stumbled upon that connection in the first place.
Well, it's a testament to the power of scientific curiosity and collaboration.
Yeah.
Researchers were studying the mechanisms of both viruses, trying to understand how they infect cells. And through that detailed analysis, they uncovered this surprising commonality.
It's like they were piecing together two parts of a puzzle that didn't seem to fit,
Yes.
and then suddenly, click, they found the connecting piece. It's really remarkable.
It is, and it underscores the fact that we can learn so much by studying both the similarities and differences between these viruses.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it really does highlight how interconnected scientific research can be. Sometimes breakthroughs in one area can lead to unexpected advancements in another.
Right. And it makes you realize we're all part of this intricate web of knowledge. And speaking of connections,
Yeah.
there's another parallel between HIV and Ebola that I think is really important to discuss: the impact of stigma and misinformation.
That's a crucial point. Both viruses have been surrounded by fear and misunderstanding and discrimination. I mean, think back to the early days of the HIV/AIDS epidemic. There was so much fear and misinformation about how the virus spread. And this led to widespread stigma against people living with HIV.
Right. It was a really dark time. And that stigma had a devastating impact on individuals and communities. And unfortunately, we saw similar patterns emerge during the Ebola outbreak, especially in West Africa.
Exactly. People traveling from affected regions were sometimes quarantined or avoided, even if they weren't showing any symptoms. And within those regions, people suspected of having Ebola were often ostracized and even attacked.
It's a reminder that fear can be just as contagious as the virus itself.
Absolutely.
And this fear can lead to really harmful behaviors that actually make it harder to control the outbreak.
For sure. It's essential to remember that viruses don't discriminate, and neither should we.
Right.
We need to approach these public health crises with compassion and understanding and accurate information. Combating stigma is just as important as developing treatments and vaccines.
I couldn't agree more. We need to focus on supporting each other, not isolating and blaming each other. Now, shifting gears a bit.
Sure.
Let's talk about how these two epidemics, while challenging in their own right, have actually provided valuable lessons for the future of public health.
Absolutely. Both HIV and Ebola have highlighted the critical importance of strong and resilient healthcare systems. We need to invest in infrastructure and training and resources to ensure that healthcare systems can respond effectively to these outbreaks and pandemics.
And we need to make sure that access to healthcare is equitable. Everyone, regardless of their location or socioeconomic status, deserves quality care.
Exactly. And beyond healthcare systems, community engagement is essential. We need to work with communities to provide accurate information and build trust and address any cultural sensitivities.
Right, it's about empowering communities to protect themselves and each other. And speaking of community empowerment, let's bring it back to our focus here, HIV testing and information. This is something that's so important for everyone to understand.
Absolutely. Knowing your HIV status is crucial for both your personal health and for preventing the spread of the virus.
And thankfully, HIV testing is much more accessible and less invasive than it used to be.
Right? There are rapid tests that provide results in about 20 minutes. And all HIV testing in the U.S. is confidential. Your results are only shared with you, and you have the right to privacy and protection against discrimination.
So there's really no reason to avoid getting tested. And remember, if you do test positive for HIV, it's not a death sentence. With early diagnosis and proper treatment, people with HIV can live long and healthy lives.
That's such an important message. HIV is treatable and it's manageable.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the similarities and differences between HIV and Ebola, the impact of stigma, the importance of public health infrastructure, and the need for community engagement. But here's where it gets really interesting. Remember that shared cellular entry pathway we talked about earlier? Well, it turns out that research into HIV treatments has actually provided some valuable leads for developing treatments for Ebola.
It's a perfect example of how knowledge gained in one area can be applied to another. Some existing HIV drugs have shown some activity against Ebola in laboratory studies.
So it's like the research into HIV is having this unexpected ripple effect, potentially helping to save lives in the fight against Ebola as well.
Exactly, and it highlights the importance of continued investment in research. We never know what breakthroughs might emerge or how they might benefit humanity in ways we never anticipated.
It really underscores the power of collaboration and shared knowledge. And speaking of shared knowledge, one of the things we try to do here at the HIV RNA Test Guide podcast is to empower our listeners with the information they need to make informed decisions about their health. Exactly. We believe that knowledge is power. And understanding HIV, from testing to treatment to prevention, that's essential for anyone who wants to take control of their sexual health.
I agree. The more you know, the better equipped you are to make decisions that protect your health and well-being.
It all comes back to those surprising connections we've explored today between HIV and Ebola. Even though they're distinct viruses, different modes of transmission, different disease courses, there are these fascinating parallels and shared learnings that can really enhance our understanding of both.
Yeah, it's really a testament to the interconnectedness of science and the power of taking a holistic view. Sometimes the most unexpected discoveries emerge when we step outside our silos and look for connections between things that seem completely separate.
Everything is connected.
Exactly.
And in this case, those connections could lead to new treatments, better prevention strategies, ultimately a brighter future for people affected by both HIV and Ebola.
It's a reminder that even in the face of challenging epidemics, there's always hope. And that hope is fueled by scientific ingenuity and collaboration and a commitment to fighting stigma and promoting understanding.
This has been a really insightful conversation. I feel like we've uncovered some real hidden gems of knowledge. What's one final thought you'd like to leave our listeners with today?
Well, if there's one thing I hope you take away from this deep dive, it's that information is key. Educate yourself about HIV, get tested regularly, and remember that a positive diagnosis is not the end of the story. With early treatment and care, you can live a long and healthy life. And as we've seen today, the fight against HIV can even have a ripple effect, informing the fight against other diseases like Ebola. So stay informed, stay empowered, and know that you're not alone in this journey.
And as always, for more information and resources, please visit the HIV RNA Test Guide website. We're here to support you every step of the way. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It was a pleasure.
Until next time, stay curious and stay well.